Sometimes friction can create heat energy, such as in this picture. In this picture, two cavemen are trying to start a fire by vigorously rubbing two sticks together. This works because the constant rubbing generates heat, which lights the sticks and causes the fire to happen. We could decrease the friction by wetting the sticks. That way, it would be almost impossible to create fire from lighting these two sticks. This is an example of kinetic pencil requires friction. You could not hold the pencil in your hand without friction. It would slip out whenever you would try to write. That's why, in this picture, friction is very helpful. Thanks to friction, we can hold pencils and also write with it. In order to decrease friction, we would have to put a coat of grease in the outside of the pencil. This is an example of kinetic energy. A train moving on a track is an example of kinetic friction because it allows the train to move. In this picture, you can see that the train is holding onto the tracks using two curved arms, which create friction between the train and the rails. This allows the train to go forwards or stop completely. The friction could be increased by changing the material from iron to rubber. This would increase the friction between the iron rails and arms, because rubber has more friction to iron than iron does to itself. Sometimes objects are too heavy for us to carry, such as this man in the picture. He is obviously not going to move the rock, but if you were to decrease the friction by putting the boulder on wheels, then you would be able to push it with minimal problems. This is not an example of kinetic energy. You could not walk without the friction between your shoe and the ground. As you try to step forward, you push your foot backwards. Friction holds your shoe towards the ground, allowing you to walk. As this picture demonstrates, the polar bear tried to walk on the ice, but because the friction between the ice and the polar bear's feet was less dense than the friction between the polar bear's feet and the ground, he slipped. In order to increase friction, you would have to give the polar bear ice skates so he can walk on the ice, such as this ice skater. A bad example of friction is how whenever we use shoes, it gets wasted in the bottom. The reason the soles of our feet get wasted is because of friction. For example, in this picture, these Jordan 11s seem to be used a lot. That is why they are very wasted. The bottom of our shoes is the only contact that we have between the ground and us. That is why the friction that happens between those burn the bottom of the shoe.